This series is brought to you by you. Thank you so much for all of my patrons and the people who have used the Jackson's affiliate links. It is thanks to you guys that this series have been made possible. Thank you so much. Welcome back to the Colossal Color Showdown. This is episode 4 of season 3, and we're going to carry on taking a look at the Perylene Maroon. We have the lift and glaze here. And Perylene Maroons on the whole is going to be pretty staining. It was actually surprising to me that the Holbein one wasn't as staining. I was expecting all of them to be like M. Graham or Mission Gold. So the most staining of these colors are those two colors, and then the least staining are the Holbein and the Rowney Szmal. Not surprisingly, because these are quite dark, intense colors, whereas these are lighter reds, so that's understandable. In terms of glazing, it's not the best glazes. Some colors are better than others. Daniel Smith's glaze is fine, Holbein fine, Schmincke doesn't. You see the outline. The way I test glazes is on the second layer. Once the bottom layer is dried, I come in and draw a box and then fill it in. And that will tell me whether a paint is going to lift too quickly, the bottom layer is going to lift too quickly or not. And if it does this lighter outline, you can see here and you can see here, it means that say you're doing the second layer and you put your wet paint down, but you've accidentally or need to go back in the same area, then the bottom layer is going to lift, and that's going to be a whole lot of nightmare for you. So if you do a lot of glazes, avoid colors that come up like this, because you just like you can put the paint down once, but don't go back in while that paint is wet, because it's going to lift like crazy. The lifting ones are definitely Schmincke, Winsor Newton, I would say De La Rowney, a little bit of Rowney Szmal, definitely Isaro. Those brands you want to avoid if you do a lot of glazes. The ones that have really good glazing are M. Graham, Da Vinci, Mission Gold, White Knights, and the Winsor Newton Gouache one, which is really interesting that these two behave so differently. But right now, the Winsor Newton Gouache one is definitely winning over the watercolor one. You can see the granulation heavier on this test in the Holbein and M. Graham than you did in the Mastone one. So that is something to differentiate between different brands. Do you want granulating one, or do you want a nice, smooth, even one? This is to just show you a color shift difference. I've just painted these two, and these two patches are already dry. This one's for Da Vinci, this one's for Mission Gold, and you can see the color difference, right? The color shift. When they're wet, they're much brighter red, and then as they dry, it's a much more muted, like a maroon color. And the other colors don't shift quite as much. These two are the worst. Mission Gold is worst in terms of color shift. So that's at least definitely something to bear in mind when you're one, picking your color, but two, also when you're using these colors, because you might decide that actually, you know what, the color they dry to is beautiful. I love it. I'm going to go for it. But then remember that these two will color shift when you are mixing colors to paint with. I have a color on my palette that color shifts way more than others at the moment, and it catches me every single time. I'm considering changing it. It's not a Perylene Maroon, it's a different color. So it's definitely something that you're going to need to get used to, and remember that they color shift. We have the salt test next, and I would say on the whole it doesn't react hugely, but the Rowney Szmal one did react beautifully to the salt, and you can see a little bit on the Isaro, a little bit on the Winsor Newton one. Again, a big difference between the watercolor and the gouache by Winsor Newton. The only thing I would say with Perylene Maroon and using salt is if you put salt, I'm going to assume that you're going to scrape it off. And I did notice that you get, I don't know if it will show up, but you get a lot of scrape marks on a lot of these colors. So in this light, can you see them? Yeah, you can see it here. So Holbein, Winsor Newton, watercolor, M. Graham, Da Vinci, Mission Gold, slightly on the De La Rowney, Perylene Red, Isaro, White Knight. I see it on these two as well. So If you do use salt, you're gonna get this sheen and it's like a greenish yellowish sheen where you've scraped. So on the whole, I probably wouldn't recommend using salt unless you're gonna leave the salt on there for that particular reason. The only ones that, yeah, they all have this sheen, and this is something that's quite new. Other colors don't behave like this, but for Perylene Maroon, on the whole, they don't react much anyway, and it's messy and it kind of ruins the surface. So I wouldn't recommend using salt. Next, we have the cotton paper. This is cheap cellulose paper, Fabriano Academia cellulose paper. And this is the Saunders & Waterford 100% cotton paper. Let's have a look at see if there's any difference in the hue. As you can see on cotton paper, the streakiness goes. And this is why I test out on cheaper paper, because then you'll know which colors will go down smooth even on a cheaper paper. But cotton paper can hide a whole host of problems that paint has. It's like a really good foundation in makeup terms, that it can cover a lot of your blemishes and uneven tones and stuff. But in terms of color differences between the two paints, let's have a look, see if there's any huge difference. I think it's a little bit more matte and muted on the Da Vinci one on the cotton paper than it is on the cheaper paper. Also, I feel like we're losing the depth that you get with the M gram, but also you're losing the streakiness. So, and then we have Mission Gold, Szmal, De La Rowney, Isaro, White Knight, and the Gouache. I would say that some of the granulation is a little bit more pronounced, like the Holbein one. I'm seeing some granulation happening on the Winsor Newton one, which wasn't so apparent on the cheaper paper. But on the whole, it's about the same in terms of hue on both papers. It's just how it goes down, how smoothly it is different. Next, we have the color mixes, and the complementary color to Perylene Maroon is something like a Viridian hue by Holbein. That's a PG7, so like phthalo green will do the job on your palette. It does create very intense color mixes if you mix it with these really strong highly tinting colors, because Perylene Maroon is a pretty high tinting strength color. I have to apologize for this. This was me dropping water onto the paper. It's not an effect of mixing these two colors. You get some really strong dark colors with colors like M gram. Mission Gold, not surprisingly, they always have really high tinting strength. To me, not particularly in this case, but Mission Gold on the whole, I find that their colors are a little bit too intense compared to other colors. It's just a surprise, but if you like really strong colors, then go for it as well. But they do also suffer from a little bit of sheen, and don't know if you can see this, but Mission Gold definitely suffers from the most sheen, followed by Schmincke has an overall sheen as well, and a little bit of sheen on the Roman Szmal as well. The other colors are good. So that's just something to look out for. Whenever you get really intense, strong, bright colors, you are more likely to have to deal with sheen on the color once it dries. Tinting strengths wise, Schmincke, Da Vinci, and Mission Gold are pretty high on tinting strength, so you get really, really strong color mixes. And on the low side, we have Holbein, the Roman Szmal, and Isaro one. They're low tinting strengths comparatively to other colors. The Perylene Maroon is pretty versatile in making a black color. If you mix it with green, you get this warm kind of brownish black color, whereas if you mix it with a strong blue, you get a nice cool gray color happening, like with the Mission Gold and Da Vinci as well. If you'd like to try any of these colors at home for yourself, but you don't want to commit to having to buy several whole tubes only to find out you don't like some of them, this month's companion dot card to this series will be perfect for you. It is the Perylene Maroon card. It has 8 Perylene Maroons from Daniel Smith, Holbein, Schmincke, Winsor Newton Mission Gold, Daily Rowney, White Knight and Winsor Newton Gouache. There's plenty of paint for you to try mixing with the colors you already have and make sure that it works in the way that you want it to before you commit to buying whole tubes. If you'd like to receive this, then all you have to do is go to patreon.com/AutoKano and sign up to the appropriate tiers, and this stock card will be on its way to you very shortly. What do I think of these colors? For me, personally, and always this section is about my personal taste, I think Isaro one is slightly outside what I was expecting for Perylene Maroon. That's not to say that it's bad or anything. It's very different. And if you're looking for something like this, I think it'd be magic. But for me personally, it's not what I'm looking for in a Perylene Maroon. I'm looking for like a deep, dark red. I think the Rowney Szmal one is a little bit too bright red. Daily Rowney one is a little bit too orangey. And my personal taste isn't towards granulating Perylene Maroon, even though I love granulation. In terms of hue, I love the M. Graham one. I also love the Winsor Newton Designer Gouache one. Both of them, but I like this one better because this one's a little bit muted. I like hues around here for Perylene Maroon. And like, again, the Winsor Newton Gouache is so much cheaper than the Winsor Newton watercolor, as well as all these top brands. I'm like, this is great, and it performs beautifully on cheap paper. So if you can't afford cotton paper and you're working on cellulose paper, that's totally okay. By the way, people get a lot of flack for using cellulose. If you're not comfortable to upgrade to cotton yet, don't worry. But let's try and get you some paints that work better with cellulose. And I would say that the Winsor Newton Designer Gouache is, one, works great on cheap paper, and two, a lot more affordable. The only thing you need to look out for is that it will crack on your palette. So it might be better to use it either straight out the tube, or if you have it in a full pan or a half pan, that kind of thing, because I would worry that if it cracks, then it might slide off your palette quite easily, and that could get really annoying, and it can get into like other paints and stuff, and it's just a whole lot of nightmare. So there is that to consider. On cotton paper, in terms of hue, I love how the Winsor Newton one looks. I think that's like a really Perylene Maroon, what I think of Perylene Maroon. I think the Mission Gold one is a little bit too dark, and also it suffers from a lot of sheen. I would say between Winsor Newton Daniel Smith for cotton paper is a great option. That's it for Perylene Maroon. What did you think of the Perylene Maroon? Do let me know in the comments down below which one is your favorite, if there's like a new color that you want to try after watching this video. And if you do want to buy any of these in the tube, then I've left links down below for you to be able to find where you can get them on Jackson's as well as Amazon US. In the next episode, we're going to be starting to take a look at the manganese violet, so do look forward to that. Thank you so much for watching this episode, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye!